Episode 5. A New Dawn. A New Sun. The morning sun rose over the labyrinth, painting the impossible architecture in shades of gold and rose. Jade stood at the window of her chambers, one hand resting on the cool glass, the other absently tracing patterns on her still flat stomach. 3 weeks had passed since her victory over the Dark Council. 3 weeks of peace and healing, and learning what it meant to build a life, rather than simply fight for survival. Behind her, the bed was a tangle of sheets and sleeping champions. Jareth lay sprawled on his back, his wild blonde hair even more chaotic than usual in sleep. Loki was curled on his side, one arm flung over Bucky, who slept with the stillness of a soldier trying to rest when he could. They looked peaceful, vulnerable, human, despite everything that made them extraordinary. The others had returned to their own chambers sometime before dawn. Even in their closeness, they were learning to balance togetherness with individual space. The castle seemed to understand this need, expanding and contracting its corridors to give them privacy when they needed it, and bringing them together when they didn't. Jade smiled at the sight of her sleeping partners, feeling a surge of affection so strong it almost hurt. This was her family, this impossible, beautiful, chaotic family, and soon they would be adding to it. She hadn't told them yet. The realization had come to her only yesterday, the subtle awareness that her body was changing, that something new was growing within her. As a Nexus, she could sense the life taking shape, could feel the way it already connected to all 7 of her anchors. The child would be theirs, truly theirs, a miracle born from the bonds they'd forged. "You're thinking very loudly, precious thing," Jareth's sleepy voice came from the bed. "It's making it difficult to enjoy my beauty rest." Jade turned to find him watching her with those mismatched eyes, one blue and one dark as midnight. Even rumpled and half asleep, he was devastatingly handsome. She crossed back to the bed and settled beside him, letting him pull her close. "I have something to tell you," she said softly. "All of you." Loki's eyes opened immediately, his god senses alert to the change in her tone. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Jade assured him quickly. "It's just something important." Bucky stirred, his metal arm gleaming in the morning light as he pushed himself up on one elbow. "Important good or important bad?" "Important wonderful," Jade said, feeling joy bubbling up in her chest. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was profound. All 3 of them stared at her, frozen in various states of waking. Then, all at once, they moved. Jareth sat up so quickly he nearly knocked Loki off the bed. The god of mischief's face cycled through a dozen expressions in as many seconds, and Bucky simply reached out with his human hand and placed it gently over her stomach, his eyes wide with wonder. "The child," Jareth breathed, his theatrical composure completely shattered. "Our child. A baby born from a Nexus and her anchors. That's never happened before in all of recorded history." "Are you sure?" Loki asked, his hand joining Bucky's on her stomach. "I mean, of course you're sure. You're a Nexus. You can sense these things. But are you really sure?" Jade laughed, the sound bright and full of happiness. "I'm really sure. I can feel him. It's a boy, I think, and he's connected to all of you, all 7. He's going to be extraordinary." Bucky's eyes were suspiciously bright. The hardened soldier, the man who had survived decades of torture and programming, looked like he might cry. "A son," he said, his voice breaking. "I never thought I'd get to have this. A family. A child. After everything I've done." "You deserve this," Jade said firmly, covering his metal hand with hers. "We all do. We fought for the right to have a future, and this is it. This is what peace looks like." Jareth stood abruptly and began pacing, his movements agitated but somehow joyful. "We need to tell the others, immediately, and we need to prepare. A Nexus child. Good grief. Do we have any idea what that even means? What kind of powers he might develop? What he'll need?" "Jareth," Jade said gently, catching his hand as he paced past. "Breathe. We have time. 9 months probably. Maybe less, maybe more. I don't think Nexus pregnancies follow normal rules." Loki had gone very still, his clever mind clearly racing. The child born from a Nexus and 7 anchors from different realities. He'll be a bridge between worlds, just like you. But more than that, he'll carry pieces of all of us. My magic, Jareth's crystal manipulation, Bucky's resilience. His eyes widened. "He's going to be the most powerful being in the multiverse." "He's gonna be our son," Jade corrected firmly. "Powers don't matter. What matters is that we love him and raise him to be good. To use whatever gifts he has to help people, not hurt them." The 3 of them looked at her, and she saw her own determination reflected back in their faces. These were men who understood darkness, who had walked through it and come out the other side. They would make sure their child never had to walk that path alone. "We should gather everyone," Bucky said, practical as always. "They deserve to hear this together." Within an hour, all 7 of her champions were assembled in the war room. Edgar had been pulled from his writing, still clutching a half-finished manuscript. Snape had arrived with his ropes buttoned incorrectly, evidence of his haste. Ben had come directly from meditation, his connection to the Force making him already aware that something momentous was about to be shared, and Freddy had materialized from the dream realm, his burnt features arranged in an expression of curiosity. Jade stood at the head of the round table, the star chart beneath its surface glowing softly. Her 7 anchors surrounded her, and she could feel the golden threads connecting them all, pulsing with life and love. "I have news," she began, and was pleased that her voice came out steady. 3 weeks ago, we forged our anchor bonds completely. We became a family in every sense of the word. And now, that family is growing." She placed her hand over her stomach, the gesture simple but unmistakable. "I'm pregnant. We're gonna have a son." The reactions were immediate and varied. Edgar's face lit up with joy so pure it was almost painful to witness. Snape's expression cycled rapidly from shock to wonder to something that looked almost like fear, but a good fear. The fear of being given something precious to protect. Ben closed his eyes and reached out with the Force, and when they opened again, they were shining with tears, and Freddy let out a whoop of laughter that echoed through the castle. "A baby," Edgar said, his poet's voice thick with emotion. "A miracle born from love across realities. I must write about this. The universe needs to know that such beauty is possible." "Absolutely not," Snape said sharply, though his eyes were soft as they fell on Jade. "The last thing we need is word spreading across the multiverse that a Nexus child has been born. Every being with dark intentions would come looking for him." "Snape's right," Ben agreed, moving to stand beside Jade. He placed his hand over hers, connecting with the life growing within her through the Force. "This child will be incredibly powerful. We need to protect him, which means keeping his existence quiet until he's old enough to protect himself." "So, we raise him here," Jareth said decisively, "in the labyrinth, where time moves differently and we control who comes and goes. He'll be safe, surrounded by people who love him, and when he's ready, we can introduce him to the wider multiverse." Jade felt a wave of gratitude for these men, for their immediate shifts into protective mode. They weren't just excited about being fathers, they were already planning how to keep their son safe. "There's something else," she said softly. "I can feel him through our bonds. He's already connected to all of you, even now when he's barely more than a spark of life. He'll carry pieces of each of you, your strengths, your gifts. He's gonna be a bridge between all your worlds." "What will we call him?" Loki asked, his voice unusually gentle. Jade had been thinking about this since the moment she'd realized she was pregnant. "Nicholas," she said. "Nicholas Kronos. Nicholas because it means victory of the people, and Kronos because he exists outside normal time, here in the labyrinth." Nicholas Kronos, Freddy repeated, testing the name. I like it. Strong name. Kid's gonna need a strong name with us as his family. Bucky laughed, the sound still unfamiliar but becoming more common. We were a pretty intimidating bunch. Former assassins, trickster gods, nightmare demons, and dark wizards. Poor kid doesn't stand a chance at having a normal childhood. Corp. Good, Jade said firmly. Normal is overrated. He'll have something better. He'll have adventure and magic and more love than any child in any reality. They spent the rest of the morning planning and celebrating. Snape immediately began researching the Nexus pregnancies, pulling ancient texts from the library's infinite shelves. Jareth started redesigning sections of the castle, creating spaces suitable for a child. Loki began teaching the goblins to be gentle, a task that proved both hilarious and challenging. Edgar started writing poems about fatherhood, then meditated on the Force, seeking guidance on how to raise a child with such incredible potential. Bucky started building things, his soldier's hands finding peace in creating rather than destroying. And Freddy, surprisingly, began crafting dreams, gentle and beautiful dreams that he planned to share with the child when he was old enough. The days that followed were full of joy and preparation. Jade's body changed gradually, her Nexus nature making the pregnancy progress in ways that defied normal biology. Some days she would show no signs at all, and others she would wait to find herself noticeably changed. Time in the labyrinth was fluid, and it seemed her pregnancy was adjusting to match. Her champions were constantly attentive, almost comically so. Jareth refused to let her lift anything heavier than a book. Loki kept conjuring comfortable chairs whenever she stood for more than a few minutes. Edgar read to her constantly, filling her ears with beautiful words. Snape developed a series of potions to ease the various discomforts of pregnancy. Ben used the Force to soothe her when she felt overwhelmed. Bucky carried her everywhere, despite her protest that she was perfectly capable of walking, and Freddy made sure her dreams were peaceful and full of happiness. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, she protested one afternoon when Jareth literally swept her off her feet to prevent her from reaching for a book on a high shelf. You're carrying the most precious cargo in the multiverse, Jareth replied, completely unrepentant as he retrieved the book for her. We're entitled to be protective. Entitled and excessive are not the same thing, Jade said, but she was smiling as she said it. The truth was, she loved their attention, loved the way they had all thrown themselves into preparing for fatherhood with the same intensity they brought to battle. 3 months passed in the labyrinth, though according to the calendar of outside worlds, barely 3 weeks had gone by. Jade's stomach had begun to swell noticeably, and she spent her days learning nursery rhymes from Jareth, magical theory from Loki, poetry from Edgar, potion making from Snape, force meditation from Ben, combat strategy from Bucky, and dreamwalking from Freddy. Their son would be born into a world of infinite knowledge and love. It was during one of these peaceful afternoons that everything changed. Jade was in the garden with Ben, practicing her lightsaber forms. She'd taken to the weapon naturally, her Nexus abilities allowing her to combine it with magic in ways that would have scandalized Jedi traditionalists. Ben had given up trying to teach her proper form, and instead simply enjoyed watching her create her own style. You're getting better, he said, watching as she parried an imaginary strike. Your connection to the Force is growing stronger every day. I think it's Nicholas, Jade replied, deactivating the lightsaber and placing one hand on her stomach. I can feel him responding to the Force when we practice. He likes it. Ben's smile was soft. He's going to be a remarkable child. I can sense his presence even now. He's already so bright in the Force, like a star waiting to be born. Before Jade could respond, the air in the garden began to change. The temperature dropped noticeably, and shadows seemed to grow longer despite the unchanging labyrinth sun. Jade felt her Nexus senses screaming danger, and she ignited her lightsaber on pure instinct. Ben's own weapon was in his hand a moment later, his body positioned protectively in front of Jade. Something's coming, something powerful. A portal tore itself open in the middle of the garden, but this wasn't like the controlled openings Jade created. This was violent, unstable, reality itself screaming as it was forced apart. Dark energy poured through, making the flowers around them wither and die. And through that portal stepped a figure Jade recognized from Ben's memories and a dozen movies she'd watched in her old life. Emperor Palpatine. He looked exactly as she remembered from the films, ancient and twisted, his face a mass of scars beneath his dark hood. His yellow eyes swept the garden, taking in Ben with his lightsaber raised, and Jade standing behind him, visibly pregnant and glowing with Nexus energy. Fascinating, Palpatine said, his voice like dry leather. The rumors across the realities are true, and Nexus has awakened, and she's gathered quite the collection of broken heroes. Ben's lightsaber hung dangerously. You're not welcome here, Palpatine. Leave. Now. The Emperor's laugh was like something dying. Peace, young Solo. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I have nowhere else to go. Before either of them could respond, the rest of the Fellowship arrived. Jade felt them through the anchor bonds, summoned by her spike of fear. Jareth appeared first, crystal spears already dancing in his hands. Loki was right behind him, magic crackling around his fingers. Bucky, Snape, Edgar, and Freddy materialized from various parts of the castle, all of them armed and dangerous. Palpatine looked around at the 7 champions arrayed against him, and something that might have been respect flickered in his yellow eyes. The Goblin King, the God of Mischief, the Winter Soldier, the Potions Master, a poet who understands death, and a nightmare made flesh. You've assembled quite the guard, young Nexus Toy 3. Who are you? Jade asked, though she already knew. She needed to hear him say it, needed to understand why one of the most evil beings in the Star Wars universe was standing in her garden. I'm Emperor Palpatine, he said, spreading his hands in a gesture that was probably meant to be non-threatening, but came off as deeply unsettling. Or I was. Now I'm just a dead man walking, seeking something I thought lost to me forever. And what would that be? Snape asked coldly, his wand trained on the Emperor's heart. Redemption, Palpatine said simply. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Of all the things Jade had expected him to say, that was not it. Jareth laughed, sharp and disbelieving. Loki's expression was pure skepticism. Bucky's metal hand flexed, ready to draw a weapon, and Ben's face had gone pale with fury. You don't get redemption, Ben said, his voice shaking with rage. You destroyed lives, entire worlds. You turned me into a monster. You killed my father. I know, Palpatine said, and for the first time, something that looked like genuine emotion crossed his scarred features. I know what I've done. Every death, every manipulation, every lie. I know, and I have been drowning in that knowledge for longer than you can imagine. He took a step forward, and immediately 7 weapons were trained on him. He stopped, raising his hand slowly. I am dead, he said quietly. Did you know that? I've died so many times, in so many realities, that I've lost count. Each time, I found a way to return, to cling to existence through the dark side of the Force. But something changed. I felt it across all realities. The awakening of the Nexus. His yellow eyes fixed on Jade, and she fought the urge to step back. You defeated the Dark Council. I felt that too. Beings who made me look like a petty tyrant, erased by the love and unity of a young woman and her champions. It made me question everything I'd ever believed about power. So you came here for what? Jade asked, her hand instinctively moving to protect her stomach. To learn our secrets? To steal my power? No, Palpatine said, and his voice cracked. I came here to beg. I am so tired of being what I am, of killing and scheming and drowning in hatred. I have seen what you've done, Nexus. You took broken men, villains and monsters and outcasts, and you gave them family. You gave them purpose. You gave them love. I want that. For the first time in my long, miserable existence, I want to be something other than a monster. The silence that followed was profound. Jade looked at her 7 champions, seeing her own confusion reflected in their faces. This was Emperor Palpatine. Darth Sidious, the man who had orchestrated the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. The being who had caused untold suffering across an entire galaxy. And he was asking for redemption. Just as strict, Bucky said flatly. It has to be. People like him don't change. People like me didn't think we could change either, Freddy said quietly. But here we are. That's different, Snape argued. We were never on his level of evil. The Emperor has committed genocide. He's tortured children. He turned Ben Solo into Kylo Ren. I did, Palpatine agreed, looking directly at Ben. And if you want to strike me down right here, I understand. I deserve it. I deserve to die painfully for what I've done to you and your family. But before you do, I need you to know that I am sorry. Those are words I have never spoken in my entire existence. But I speak them now, and I mean them with whatever is left of my black soul. Ben's lightsaber wavered. Jade could feel his conflict through their bond, the war between his desire for vengeance and his journey toward the light. She moved to stand beside him, placing her hand over his on the lightsaber hilt. What do you think? She asked softly, trusting his judgment. Ben was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving Palpatine's face. Finally, he spoke, his voice carefully controlled. I think he's telling the truth. I can feel it in the Force. He's not lying about being tired, about wanting to change, but wanting something and actually doing it are different things. Jade turned to look at Palpatine, but really look at him. With her Nexus senses, she could see beyond the physical form to this spiritual reality beneath, and what she saw made her breath catch. The Emperor's soul was a twisted, blighted thing, corroded by darkness and hatred and centuries of evil. And at the very core, buried so deep it was nearly impossible to see, was a tiny spark of light, the tiniest fragment of the man he might have been before he fell. I can see you, she said softly, all of you. The darkness, yes, all the terrible things you've done, but I can also see that spark, that tiny piece of light that you've been drowning for so long. Palpatine's yellow eyes widened. You can see that? I thought it was long dead. It's not dead, Jade said, just buried, hidden under centuries of darkness. But it's there. She looked at her 7 champions, at the men who had all walked through darkness themselves and immersed into light. I think we need to talk about this, all of us, in private. You're actually considering this, Loki said, not quite a question. Jade, this is Emperor Palpatine. Do you understand what you're suggesting? I'm suggesting what was done for all of you, Jade replied firmly. You are all villains in your own ways. Maybe not on his scale, but you all did things you regret. You all hurt people, and I offered you redemption, family, love. How can I deny him the same chance? Because he's actually evil, Bucky said. There's a difference between being broken and being purely malevolent. Is there? Edgar asked quietly. I've written about evil my entire life, studied it, tried to understand it. And what I've learned is that evil is often just pain that's been allowed to fester for so long, it rots everything it touches. If that spark of light that Jake sees is real, then there's still a chance for healing. This is insane, Snape muttered, but he lowered his wand slightly. We're actually debating whether to offer redemption to one of the most evil beings in the multiverse. Welcome to the family business, Freddy said with a dark laugh. We specialize in insane. Jake turned to Palpatine, who had been watching their debate with something like hope beginning to kindle in his eyes. If we do this, if we give you this chance, there will be conditions. You don't get to stay in the labyrinth. Not yet. You'll have to earn that right, and you certainly don't get anywhere near our son. The last was said fiercely, protectively, and Palpatine nodded immediately. I understand. I wouldn't trust me either, but I will do whatever is necessary. Any task, any trial, any penance. I just want a chance to be something other than what I am. Ben deactivated his lightsaber with a sharp snap hiss. His jaw was tight, his emotions clearly in turmoil. If we do this, I want it on record that I think it's a terrible idea. This man, this monster, he destroyed my family. He's the reason I became Kylo Ren. The reason I killed my own father. I know, Jade said gently, moving to stand in front of him. She placed her hands on either side of his face, forcing him to look at her. And you have every right to hate him. Every right to want him dead. But Ben, you were also given a chance to redeem yourself. Doesn't he deserve the same? He doesn't deserve anything, Ben said, but his voice broke on the words. He deserves to suffer for eternity. Maybe, Jade agreed, but revenge and justice aren't the same thing. And I think the greatest justice, the truest victory, would be to take this being who caused so much darkness and turn him toward the light, to prove that no one is beyond saving. She felt tears on her cheeks and realized she was crying. I'm a Nexus. My purpose is to unite and heal. If I turn away from Palpatine because his darkness is too great, then what does that say about my purpose? Where do I draw the line? Who gets to be saved and who doesn't? Sheriff made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. You beautiful, impossible woman, you're actually going to try to redeem Emperor Palpatine. We're going to try, Jade corrected. If we do this, it's not just me, it's all of us, our family, because that's what we do. We take broken things and make them whole. She turned back to Palpatine, who was now openly weeping, black tears streaming down his ruined face. But you need to understand something. This isn't going to be easy. We're not just going to accept you and welcome you with open arms. You have centuries of darkness to work through. It's going to take time and effort, and probably more pain than you've ever experienced. Are you truly willing to walk that path? Yes, Palpatine said, his voice raw. I'm so tired of the dark. I want to see the light again, even if it burns me to ash. I want to feel something other than hatred. I want to matter for something other than death. Please, please give me this chance. Jade looked at each of her 7 champions, seeing the doubt and concern in their faces, but also seeing their trust in her. They didn't like this. They didn't trust Palpatine. But they trusted her, and that was enough. Then we'll try, she said finally. But Palpatine, if you betray us, if you hurt anyone in the family or threaten my son, there will be no mercy. Do you understand? I understand, Palpatine said, sinking to his knees in the garden. And I swear, on whatever good remains in me, I will not betray this gift you're giving me. Snape moved forward, his wand still raised, but his expression thoughtful. If we're doing this, we do it properly. He'll need magical bindings to prevent him from accessing the dark side completely, or way to ensure he can't hurt anyone while he's here. I can help with that, Loki offered, though his voice was reluctant. As guardian binding spells combine with your potion, Snape, we can create something that will hold even him. The next several hours were spent creating a magical prison that wasn't a prison, a set of constraints that would prevent Palpatine from using his considerable dark powers while allowing him to exist peacefully in a secure location. They created a small dwelling on the very outskirts of the labyrinth, far from the castle and the heart of their home. It was comfortable, but isolated, a place where the Emperor could begin his long journey toward redemption without posing a threat to anyone. As it worked, Jade watched Palpatine carefully. He submitted to every binding, every constraint, without complaint. He seemed almost relieved to have his powers sealed away, like a man who had been carrying an enormous weight and was finally allowed to set it down. Why now? Jade asked him as Snake and Loki wove the final binding spells. You'd existed for how long? Centuries? Millennia? Why seek redemption now? Palpatine looked at her, and for the first time, she saw him without the mask of the Emperor. Just a tired, ancient being who had lost his way so long ago he'd forgotten there was ever a path. Because I felt your awakening, he said quietly. Across all realities, I felt the light so pure, it made me remember what I'd once been. Before the darkness, before I chose power over everything else. I was a boy once, believe it or not. A boy who wanted to understand the Force, who wanted to make the galaxy better. Somewhere along the way, I lost that boy. Buried him under ambition and hatred. But when I felt your light, Nexus, I felt him stir. That boy I used to be. And I realized I didn't want to die as a monster I'd become. I wanted one chance, just one, to remember what it felt like to be good. Jade felt tears threatening again. This was why she was in Nexus. Not to fight battles or travel realities, but to see the spark of light in even the darkest souls and fan it into flame. Then we'll help you remember, she promised. As the sun set over the labyrinth, painting the maze in shades of purple and gold, Palpatine was settled into his new dwelling. The bindings were in place, the protections established. He would not be able to harm anyone, but he would be comfortable, with access to books and time to reflect on everything he'd done. Jade stood with her 7 champions outside the dwelling, watching through the window as Palpatine sat in a simple chair, his scarred hands folded in his lap, his eyes closed in something that might have been prayer. We just offered redemption to Emperor Palpatine, Ben said, his voice still full of disbelief. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and think this was all a fever dream. It's real, Jade said softly, leaning against him. Her hand rested on her stomach, feeling Nicholas move within her. Their son, who would be born into a world where even the darkest beings could find redemption. And it's the right thing to do. I hope you're right, Bucky said. Because if you're not, we just invited one of the most dangerous beings in existence into our home. She's right, Freddy said unexpectedly. Everyone turned to look at him in surprise. What? I'm a nightmare demon who tortures people in their sleep. If anyone understands darkness, it's me. And I can tell you, that broken bastard in there is genuinely sorry. I can taste it in the air around him. Regret so deep, it's like a physical thing. He's telling the truth. Jareth produced a crystal sphere and held it up, images swirling within its depths. The crystals show possibilities, and I see paths where this works, where Palpatine truly redeems himself and becomes something else entirely. But I also see paths where it goes very wrong. The future is not set. Then we'll make sure we follow the right path, Jade said firmly, together, the way we do everything. They returned to the castle as full night fell over the labyrinth. The goblins had prepared a feast, somehow sensing that something momentous had happened and deciding that food was the appropriate response. Fellowship gathered in the Great Hall, eating and drinking and slowly processing the enormity of what they'd just done. Nicholas is going to grow up in the strangest family in the multiverse, Edgar mused, his poet's mind already crafting verses about the day's events. His godfathers will include a nightmare demon, a trickster god, a reformed emperor, and a goblin king. That's either the best possible childhood or the most traumatic. Probably both, Loki said with a grin, but he'll never be bored. As the evening wore on and her champions gradually retired to their rooms, Jade found herself alone in the garden where Palpatine had first appeared. The flowers that had died when he arrived were already beginning to regenerate, the labyrinth's magic healing the damage. She sat on a stone bench, one hand on her stomach, and reached out with her Nexus senses. She could feel Nicholas, growing stronger every day. She could feel her 7 anchors, scattered throughout the castle, but always connected to her. And now, on the very edge of her awareness, she could feel Palpatine, the knot of darkness slowly beginning to unravel. You're building something incredible, a voice said, and Jade looked up to find Ben standing in the garden entrance. A family that doesn't just accept broken people, but actively seeks them out. It's beautiful and terrifying. Are you okay? Jade asked gently, with what we decided today. Ben came to sit beside her, his body warm against hers in the cool evening air. No, he said honestly. I'm not okay. Palpatine destroyed my life. Destroyed my family. Part of me wants him to suffer forever. But another part of me, the part that you've been helping me rediscover, knows that revenge won't heal anything. If he genuinely wants to change, if there's even a chance he can find redemption, then refusing him that chance makes me no better than he was. He placed his hand over hers on her stomach. I want Nicholas to grow up in a world where redemption is always possible, where no one is ever beyond saving. If that means I have to learn to forgive the unforgivable, then that's what I'll do. For him. For us. For the future we're building. Jade leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. You're going to be an amazing father. We all are, Ben replied. This kid is gonna have 7 fathers who would move heaven and earth for him. 8, if Palpatine actually manages to redeem himself, though I'm not ready to think about that yet. They sat together in the garden as the stars came out over the labyrinth, 7 stars burning brightly in a constellation around one central point, the Nexus and her anchors. A family forged from impossibility and love. And soon, very soon, they would welcome a new light into that constellation. Nicholas Kronos, the son of 7 fathers and one extraordinary mother, a child born from love across realities, who would grow up knowing that every soul, no matter how dark, carried a spark of light worth saving. The war was over, but a new adventure was beginning. One of fatherhood and family, of redemption and hope, of building a home that spanned all realities. Jade smiled, feeling Nicholas move within her, and knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The Nexus and her miracles. A family like no other. And it was only just beginning. Nexus and her miracles. A family like no other. And it was only just beginning.